Well, you guys probably heard me promote Past the Light. We talked a little bit about my review of the film and what I liked, what I didn't like, and how I recommended it. And we have the writer of the film. He has a role as well in the film. Victor Hawks is with us. We'll talk about this and flesh it out. Victor, thank you so much for fitting this into your schedule.
No, thanks for having me.
So let's go to the beginning. You wrote the script for this. Talk about sort of the initial blossom of the idea and how that kind of bloomed for you.
Well, for me, it was I had a niece, a young niece who was a young Christian lady, 16 now, and she was kind of complaining. It was kind of around the 2012 elections, and a lot of the politicians were, kind of spitting things at him, and she was watching the coverage with my family and stuff, and she's like, I don't understand why people think that way and feel that way, and in my generation, we just don't, and I'm conflicted, and I don't feel like there are movies for me. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, it's just all negativity and all this and all that. And I wanted to find I wish I could see myself on the screen more. And I said, well, all right, let me kind of help you. And I looked at the political process particularly. And, a lot of ways it's like the politicians just throw darts at each other. And just throw darts and kind of divide the parties or divide people and divide through a lot of messaging. And, I don't know if they know what it sounds like, but it sounds like hate to most people. The things they say a lot of times. I'm like, well, what if you juxtapose that process with a kid who just is all about loving one another, serving his community, and doing things not for a win, not for his own gain, but rather just to spread true kindness and and kind of just showing that God's love is for everyone, and rather than try and divide people, bring people together. So I kind of kept Carly in mind, and I kind of kept just this process in mind, and the political process for me was just a good juxtaposition to be able to do that. So we wrote the film, and then we just found a lot of things. Obviously there's a lot of things inside of it that are a slight bit of a fantasy, but at the same time, you have kids running for Congress and office all the time, and they can't win. It's just with the advent of YouTube and for the advent of people like that, things like that I didn't have when I was a kid. Kids can film themselves doing things and get coverage, immediate coverage, as long as it's catchy. You do. So it's trying to fit all those into the message of God's love for everyone and moving it forward through this process, and especially to inspire my young niece and to show her youth empowerment, and kids can do a lot if they put their minds to it.
Did you have something that sort of inspired you with the whole, some of the random act of kindness that were done in the film?
Well, it's something that we kind of, obviously the way, one of the main things that I believed in my life and the film kind of shows is what I call the simplicity of kindness. It takes 2 seconds to make someone's day. It's like, hey, Brandon, I like your shirt. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And that little one sentence make set you on a different path that day. Like, oh, I'm feeling good about my shirt. I'm walking a little taller. I'm feeling all right here. And, and things that we did, I went to Miami Military Academy, years ago now. And it was just kind of like, watching the situation where, Miami was a very interactive school. It's a military academy. It's a private school. So, we had access to a lot. We can get places to do things. And I did something kind of like the lever sequence in our school. It's just like, we had this, that was more for like, we had to do a lot of stuff like community service kind of stuff through the academy, like homeless shelters and stuff like that. And one of the ideas I saw when I was at a homeless shelter was just say something that to your neighbor. I was like, what if that spread inside of a high school? Because high school kids, they're at the stage in their lives where they want to be too cool for school, and they want to be like, I don't need that. It's okay, And so, but what if we engage each other just a little bit more? So I kind of did something similar to just like, kind of passing a note to someone or something like that in high school and say, hey, man, I like that paper you did. That was really cool. Just kind of going out of your way to say something nice. And it kind of, it bonded our senior class quite a bit. We're all still friends, and just kind of being able to communicate with one another, which I think is important. So that's kind of like essentially some of the spark for that idea that was in the film.
I had a teacher tell me in high school once, it's the art of the compliment.
Yes, it really is.
It's definitely one of the high points of the film. We're talking about Past the Light is expanding into at least 50 more theaters this week. So you want to make sure you check your schedule in your local theater. If you're listening to us online, if you're catching us locally, I know it's playing in the New Tampa area. You can check that out. It's called Past the Light. Now, Victor, the one area that I definitely have to say that I struggled a little bit was kind of the hyperbole of John Grice's character. That he become more of a Westboro Baptist church Christian rather than I think what most churches are. And I think that was a hard balance for, I think, the Christian audience. Tell me how you kind of put that together, and then how you felt that it came out on screen.
Well, the thing is, for me, it has very little to do with conservative Christians or not. I mean, my family is a conservative Christian, and it's not a question of believing conservative Christians believe that or are like that. But I'll tell you what, a lot of politicians say that, and flat out, a lot of Bauman's speeches were just not too far from Rick Santorum's or the Michelle Bachmans or the people who, I mean, when you say things literally on the public record, like Michelle Bachman would say, if you're involved in the gay or lesbian lifestyle, it's bondage. It's a personal despair, a personal enslavement. Those words, if you're not directly in those camps, to the rest of the universe sound directly like hate. And it's spun that way. And the thing is, it wasn't for the church. I didn't have a pastor up there saying those things. I didn't have a religious leader up there saying those things. I had a politician up there saying those things that they do say them continuously to charge their base. And I understand that's a part of winning. I understand that's a part of the process. And the intention of the film was to juxtapose this other kid who had none of that in his speech. It's like, hey, let's all try to love each other, and let's try. Because, I guess the misconception could be it is common on conservative Christians, but it's not really at all, because that's how I came up, and that's what my family is. But I think that in the political process, people use things and words like, Rick Santorum. If you look at his speeches online, and I like the guy. My dad, knows guys who know him. And my dad, works in the political process, the Republican political process, in there. And it's, but if you look at the words online, just actually look at the words that is spoken. It is not far. like when he says, if the Supreme Court says that you have the right to consensual gay sex in your home, then you have the right to bigamy, you have the right to polygamy, you have the right to incest, you have the right to adultery, you have the right to anything. Like, basically saying, if this is right, and these are public statements on public record. And Bauman's words are essentially a compilation of all these things. Because I really do believe quite a bit in the truth, and I really do believe in, and it was obviously used as a device a little bit more to create, obviously just not a contentious relationship, but like obviously a challenge. There has to be one guy saying this, there has to be one guy saying this. But Bauman's words were frankly just not far from people who have been saying them very recently. It's not the moral majority in the 80s. I didn't have to go back that far. I went back to 2012. And it wasn't like that far-fetched. And I have hundreds of quotes from politicians who running in that 2012 race. Not just Santorum, not just Sarah Palin, not just Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, all these people. And honestly, even a couple liberal people. Just because they lived in the states that they thought that would charge their base. And it was much less common in conservative Christians, and much more common in politics. People use the word of Christ to arm themselves with a spear to be able to divide people. And it happens, and it continuously happens. Because if you're not in those camps, you feel like it's hate being thrown at you. If you don't know how to filter those words, you feel like it's hate. You feel like it's a problem. And those exact words, some of the exact words that Franklin uses, are some of the exact words from some of these politicians, slightly spun to not be verbatim. And that's a fact.
Writer Victor Hawks is talking to us about Past the Light, the development of the character in this, whose his last name is Baum. He's running for the office against a teenager who has really created a campaign that is based on a positive perspective of religion and Christianity and all that. And, Victor, what did you use as sort of your palette to piece together, the political platform that he sort of presents, this positive? Because let's face it, we're not really seeing that in our political spectrum on either side of the aisle. Now, we might see someone who's contrasting, like you say. You gave Rick Santorum and Michelle Bachmann as an example. We might see someone trying to contrast them, but not necessarily speaking from a positive perspective as the character does in the film. So how did you put him together?
Well, you look at there's a couple of cases like that, even, for example, like a Derek Siever who ran for office in 2000, Sarah Blair. Like, people, kids have done this, obviously to no avail because they can't win. And, when you're younger, I kind of try to put myself in the shoes of when I was 17 or 18, and when I was just a little way more idealistic. Because obviously, as we get older, that fades away. Life, the realities of life and what it is, kind of catch up with you. But when I was that age, I remember myself being far more idealistic, and I'm like, you know what? It's not the worst thing if some of that idealism remains in our lives, and some of that, I can do this no matter what, remains in our lives. And Steve was a reflection of, a little bit of an idealistic way, but at the same time, something that's entirely feasible, especially in today's world where you can get exposed immediately. Right now, I mean, when I was growing up, you had a camcorder and good luck, But I mean, YouTube and all these, Instagram, Facebook, people, kids get famous in a minute, and infusing themselves with positivity. And for me, it was about the idealistic way of what would happen if a kid, despite all of it, there's the God in my heart tells me, to live through action and to move forward. And what would happen if this kid, despite all the times he was knocked down, just got back up with a smile, turn the other cheek, like Jesus tells us to do. And what would happen if that was lived? And how infectious that could be if it was genuine. And the key was Steve, he had to be genuine. He had to be. Some people have said to me, well, it'd be better if Steve had a deep. I'm like, Steve, there's plenty of things he's dealing with. He's dealing with his parents' marriage is falling apart. He's dealing with being bullied. He's dealing with a lot of stuff. And there, I know nice kids like Steve who just try to be nice to everybody, and they do their little best and try to infusing that positive energy within the political process was, just was an interesting thing, like I said earlier, for me, just because it doesn't happen much. And even, still today, like the politicians just spend a lot of time throwing darts and not a lot of time bringing each other in, bringing us in. And I just wanted to show Steve bringing people in. And that was just the important thing to me at all costs. And that included, everyone who, feels like they don't have a shot. He wanted to bring them in, much like Jesus did in the Bible, much like Jesus with Mary Magdalene, with all these things. I mean, there are countless things about how Jesus reached out, and would befriend the lowest of society in order to say, hey, everyone's to be loved, So to see that put in action in the political process in 2014 was just something, sure, idealistic, but maybe we could use some idealism. That's the way I took it.
We're talking about Pass the Light. It is a great family-based film with this interesting dialogue that is created about Christianity and faith in a political arena, which is the setting of the film. And Steve has got a very, very pay-it-forward, random act of kindness movement that is built that is very contradictory to the current political landscape, and so many folks rally behind that in the film. And it is an interesting commentary not only on society but on our Christian walk and what we're actually doing in our day-to-day lives. And Victor, as you look back now, the film's already been done. It's out. You've gotten some, I'm sure, positive and negative comments. All those kinds of things come with the territory. What has been the one thing you're going to hang your hat on that really helped change you coming on the other side of this process?
Well, honestly, I think it's the thing I'm most proud of is that we did stick to what we wanted to do, and like reviews are a funny thing because I grew up a Broadway performer forever before this, so I was very, very used to reviews of the affirmative or the negative, and reviews never bothered me or whatever, because I think someone has opinion and everyone has their opinion. But a lot of the reviews have been great, some have been mixed, some have been, one or two have been straight up terrible. And you go with it and you roll with it. But I think as long as you stay true to what you decided to do, and as long as you understand that, you know these things going in. Like, I knew probably going in, like, you know what? Some people are going to have a problem with Brahman. They're going to think he's two-dimensional. They're going to think he's this. But I've done the research, and this is like, your biggest problem with him. And I did the research, and hey, maybe he came across like that to you, and that's entirely valid. But, for me, the honest representation of what I was seeing and what my niece was seeing on TV the day I started writing the film, and she was seeing this politician out there literally just railing against people. Railing against, she said, is that right? Like, should our political leaders be doing that? I'm like, you know what, probably not. So, in the honesty, the way I went through staying true, because obviously it was a big deal to have a homosexual character in the movie, and people have said stuff about that. And for me, it's like, well, that's the world we live in. That's the world we have here. I mean, it rather than, and it has been said that, they should be quote unquote cast out in some ways, some ways verbatim, some ways not. But to kids who are coming up, they don't see the world that way because, young kids are out now. Like, when I was coming up, everyone was closeted, but that's not the case anymore. And our young people are left to, deal with the world as it is. And the Christianity, the God in my heart, like, I believe God set seeds in us and sets us in all different paths of life, all different ways. And he sent me on a path that saw me on a Broadway stage for 12 years, then LA, then this and this. And, someone once asked me, why didn't I just cut the gay character? I'm like, that's like telling all my friends, like, it's okay. It's better if you don't exist. And I can't do that. Like, I felt awful. And, like, I've watched homosexual people be the kindest, wildly talented. I know my friend Billy makes my old-time grandmother cry from his voice. And I'm like, God, to me, God's there in those moments, working through, yes, that homosexual person. And there was a lot I had to stay true to, and a lot of battles we had to fight in order to keep the movie intact the way we wanted it to be. And the biggest thing for me was God's love is for everyone. And the fact that we stayed true to that is what I'm most proud of. Because, yes, it was a lot of hard things to deal with. And, and Christian movies it's a balance because everyone protects their faith so vehemently as they should. And sometimes in order to protect our faith, we don't necessarily open ourselves to communication. And we were never ever saying, we want to change the way you believe, but we're saying maybe we can change the way we communicate. And that was the biggest thing inside of the film because that's, you start with a place of love and communication, we can move forward, we can find some common ground. We start in a place of divisiveness and I'm right, you're wrong, the conversation's over. And I'm glad that we, despite whatever people have said, we kept that sentiment intact and we went forward because it was difficult in a lot of ways to be able to keep all the layers of the story. And we were fought on it from the beginning to cut, obviously the character, this, and, but I'm glad we took intact and it was an exercise. It was an exercise in belief to be able to keep all that in. So that was, to me, that's important, and I feel good about that.
Pass the light. We've been talking to the writer of the film, Victor Hawks, and we will link to the trailer. We'll get their website up there for folks. Make sure you know how to get your tickets. I put up my review, even if you're interested in trying to get out my comments on it. I really enjoyed the film. I think we're at an age with not only a ton of great faith-based films, but also faith-based films that are bursting the bubble a little bit, creating challenges. The Song was one of my favorite films of last year. It did the same thing on, sexual commitment and, A Fall from Grace. And this film, I think, really deals with, what is a Christian's role in the political arena? What is our belief systems? How we handle that? And what a challenge it is. And Victor, I thank you so much for your time, fitting us into your schedule, and being so transparent about developing the film.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.